Hello and happy Thursday, sixth graders. Today we are going to talk about, well, in fact, we're going to go backwards because even though I think it was very important to set up what we talked about with the triumvirate, because that's going to end up being the end of the Roman Republic and it's going to replace it with something entirely different. Julius Caesar is going to be the head of that. In fact, he's going to be in the end the person that brings about that end. And in order to understand why he does what he does, we need to talk more about his early life. And even though we brought it up briefly when we went through our notes yesterday in our discussion, it doesn't really do a very good job of understanding, at least not visually. So I found these clips that I put together that show what things were like for him as a kid, animated, and I think it's really, really good. Explains it well. So we're gonna watch that, and then I'm gonna interject if I feel that it's necessary for me to do so. But otherwise, we're just gonna enjoy. We're gonna watch it, and after that, you'll do your exit ticket. Might not be a bad idea for you to have that up right now, by the way.
Nephew. During the ancient Roman Empire, many men wrote their names in the eternity of history. Some will be remembered as brave and astute commanders. Others earned fame for their cruelty and cowardice. But one name still echoes century after century: Gaius Julius Caesar. Julius Caesar was born on July 13th, 100 BC. As a child, Caesar already proved himself as an adventurer, as he was an active and good-spirited boy. But at just 16, his life changed abruptly. His father passed away, and Julius suddenly became the head of his family. Julius was the nephew of Gaius Marius.
So Marius is going to be important because not only is he related to Caesar, but he's going to bring about a huge change in the Roman army. And that was something that Sulla would end up taking advantage of when he ends up defeating him. And we talked about that yesterday. Okay, so we'll head back to it. We'll talk about the life of Marius and how it's going to spell a lot of trouble for Caesar.
A great general and politician. He became famous for his military victories and for reorganizing the model of the Roman legions. Marius was known for his magnetic personality. Also, he was immensely respected by the soldiers who fought alongside him. That influenced the character of the young Julius Caesar, who saw in his uncle a model to be followed. But during Julius's adolescence, his uncle waged a civil war against ambitious Lucius Cornelius Sulla. They fought for the control of the city of Rome. In the midst of this civil war, Julius Caesar married the daughter of his uncle's political ally. His beloved's name was Cornelia Cinna. Together, they had a daughter named Julia. Marius lost his life during a battle, and Cornelius Sulla assumed the position of dictator, something that placed him above the Roman laws, with almost absolute power in the city. Although Julius Caesar had no direct involvement in the conflict, he felt threatened by the new dictator and his uncle's executioner. Seeing no other alternative, and in an attempt to get away from Rome as quickly as possible, Julius enlisted in the army, where he fought in distant Turkey.
I think we have two things here that are important. He sees two examples. One, Marius, great man, great fighter who fought along with his men and was very popular. He related to them, right? And they respected him. But he also sees what Sulla, his enemy, was able to do when he single mindedly tried to seize power and make himself dictator. And he sees successes in both. And there's no coincidence at all that Caesar will end up doing both of these things when he joins the army.
Julius served in the army with great prominence, even receiving the civic crown as a reward for his heroic acts. He was promptly recognized by his superiors and veteran soldiers, showing a promising future as a military commander. But in 78 BC, Julius received the news that his rival had died. Cornelius Sulla had died suddenly. For Julius Caesar, that meant a chance to come home. After
You can go ahead and comment in the class comment for the Edpuzzle, but I'd be willing to bet money that he was poisoned or he was assassinated. Dying suddenly as a dictator almost guarantees that somebody did it on purpose.
fulfilling his contract in the army, Julius returned to his home. However, to his misfortune, his inheritance had been confiscated by Sulla's abusive government. To survive, Caesar used his powerful voice and his oratory skills to become a successful lawyer. And by working hard, Julius Caesar was able to rebuild his family's social status. When Julius was about 25, he traveled across the Aegean Sea. The vessel was attacked by pirates, and the largest of the crew was killed. The few survivors were captured to be sold as slaves, and for those born into wealthy families, a high ransom was demanded.
Trireme, you can tell by the 3 sets of oarsmen that are sitting right next to each other. 3 rows, trireme.
Further away from home, and in a desperate situation, the future seemed uncertain and bleak for Julius Caesar. The days passed slowly while Julius Caesar was kept as a prisoner on a pirate ship. When the pirates discovered that Julius was part of a wealthy family, they demanded a lot of money to free him. The pirates demanded plenty of silver coins in exchange for Julius's life. At the time, it was considered an absurd price. But Julius Caesar was always a proud and fearless man. He told the pirates that they should demand.
If you're taken prisoner and they ask for a ransom or money to get you back, a natural person would say, hey, look, I don't care whatever money they give me or they give you for me. Let me go. I want out of here, right? So what Caesar's about to do is incredibly bizarre, but it shows how much he thinks of himself.
Demand even more coins in exchange for his life. But he warned that as soon as he was free, he would travel the seas to get back at them. The pirates mocked Julius. Throughout the journey, they ridiculed his arrogance. But at last, they accepted his cash offer. When he was finally free, Julius used his oratory gifts to attract sailors and warriors to his cause. And using the rest of his fortune, he set up a fleet of ships. Caesar spent several months sailing and facing pirate ships. His victories allowed him to make a profit by plundering the captured ships. When Julius finally found the pirates who had kidnapped him, he defeated them in battle and had the survivors crucified. The pirates paid a high price for mocking Julius Caesar. That increased Caesar's fame. His name was already popular on the streets of Rome. When he returned home, he was summoned into the army. Again, he left to fight in foreign lands. Julius stood out again on the battlefields, thus conquering the position of military tribune. This guaranteed him the right to command many soldiers and run for political office. Julius Caesar returned to Rome in 69 BC. That year he began his political career, taking up a new post in the Roman Senate. His wife Cornelia had become pregnant again. Everything in Caesar's life seemed peaceful. But to Julius's misfortune, his beloved wife died that year due to a birth filled with complications that stole her life and that of her baby. Shortly after his wife's funeral, Julius was sent to serve militarily in Spain. He was the administrator.
This means that Caesar only has one child. Now, we'll get into how there's a rumor that he had more, or at least one more, but this means Julia is his only child. And when there's a problem with him and Pompey, the other person that's in the triumvirate, right, the very successful one, he actually gives his daughter to Pompey in marriage in order for them to have an alliance, to work together. So it's a really big twist of fate that his only child will marry the person who ends up becoming his sworn enemy.
Administrator of the territories controlled by Rome. One day, Julius decided to get to know the city of Cadiz better, where he was living. After traveling some distance, he found a statue already worn out by time. When Julius approached, he noticed that it was a statue of Alexander the Great. As he approached the feet of the statue, Caesar felt an enormous torment and began crying. He was already 33 years old. He felt he had not conquered anything great in his life yet. On the contrary, Alexander the Great, at that age, had already conquered an empire. At that moment, Caesar swore he would not rest until he was equal to Alexander in his conquests.
So, as we go over to your exit ticket and you're noticing, maybe you've had it pulled up by now, that's the story. And if you think about it, one must be pretty high on themselves or really believe in themselves to think that they've disappointed being in the Senate, being very successful, having a wife, a child, and getting the wealth back that his family had lost. And yet he cries of sadness when he sees Alexander's statue because he is 33, the time that Alexander died, but he doesn't think he's done enough. So I want you to think, in your opinion, what does that say about Caesar as a person for him to cry of sadness when he thinks about what Alexander had accomplished by the time that he had died, or his age? Well, you've got a little bit of reading to do. I'm going to take a look here. You won't see it, but I want to make sure that I tell you the right information, even though it'll be on your exit ticket. You've got 3 questions from your book, and it's going to be from pages 98 to 102, and one of those pages is just a full statue or a picture, I can't remember, of Caesar. So you really only have like 3 pages of reading to do. Make sure you get your weekly assessment done, and as always, words of wisdom there from the canine. All right, have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you on Monday.